I think, in my opinion, the Super Nintendo has the best library of any game console. Super Metroid, Mega Man X, Castlevania 4, SimCity, Pilot Wings, F-Zero, Final Fantasy 3, Chrono Trigger, Donkey Kong Country, Mario World, Mario RPG, Mario Kart, Zelda, Link to the Past, Earthbound. You just can't top it. So it had a lot of good games, but if you dig deep enough, if you sniff hard for that diarrhea dookie, you'll find rare, putrid crusted gems such as Wizard of Oz or Lester the Unlikable. And if you really want to get down to it, Hong Kong 97, but that doesn't really count because it was just a ROM for the Super Famicom only, and it wasn't even really much of a game at all. So it's been a while since I dedicated a full episode to a Super Nintendo game, so let's break out Dennis the Mother Menace to South Central while drinking your juice in the hood. It was based on the 1993 movie Dennis the Menace, which was based on the 86 cartoon series, which was based on the 59 sitcom, which was based on the 51 comic strip that by some total coincidence came out the same exact day as another comic titled Dennis the Menace in the UK, which later became known as Dennis the Menace and Gnasher, just to offer some distinction. Such as, this game is diarrhea, while this game is diarrhea and puke. I mean, I gotta admit, I never knew Dennis had a British twin. Two comics, both about a troublesome boy, both debuting the same day, and if you're from the UK, you'll call the one that I'm talking about the other Dennis the Menace, and vice versa. So it's like two separate dimensions. Yeah, two dimensions separated by an ocean. And speaking of ocean, the game was created by Ocean, the same nuts who brought you RoboCop 2 and Addams Family on NES. Geez, of course it was them. They're like the British version of LJN. Oh, and because of this whole British versus American Dennis the Menace thing, the PAL version of the game is simply titled Dennis without the Menace. But even with the name confusion, both Dennises led to their fair share of TV series and movies, but I'll always best remember the 86 Dennis the Menace cartoon show. And from what I saw, the characters seemed to peak in popularity around the time the 93 film came out, which was one of several films about mischievous young boys riding the wave of Home Alone. It was all about traps, pranks, and toy weapons. When you look at the evolution of action movies, beginning with westerns, you'll notice how the main choice of weapon always changes. In the 50s and 60s, it was all about rifles. In the late 70s and 80s, it was lasers. But as soon as the 90s hit, it was slingshots and squirt guns. All right, let's start this garbage up. You notice how I already declared it garbage before the review even begins? Yeah, that means we already hit bottom. Our face is already in the toilet bowl, and the only direction now is to force our way down into the septic tank. I'm just saying, it's gonna suck. Please expect no positivity. The first thing you need to do when you turn this game on is go to the options and give yourself 9 lives. You're gonna need them because this game is hard as fossilized dinosaur. It's a non-stop storm. Everything you see wants you dead. It's filled to max capacity with enemies and hazards. I usually can't make it 10 seconds without getting hit. Traditionally, the character Dennis keeps annoying his neighbor, Mr. Wilson. Even though Dennis means well, he always ends up causing huge problems for Mr. Wilson. He was like the original Steve Urkel, and in that same regard, it seems the game is just as troublesome to the player. So they got that right. The first level has you running through the hallways of Mr. Wilson's house. Now the halls just keep going on and on. If this was a real house, it would take up an entire block but only be about 10 feet wide. Imagine living next door to this monstrosity. Also, does Mr. Wilson's house have some kind of poltergeist? An infinite amount of records are flying off the record player. Teacups, bowling balls, boxing gloves, and even suppositories try to kill you. He also owns 1 million purple cats. The Tiger King's got nothing on him. His attic is infested with spiders and these creepy bats that look like they have human faces. And his main concern is Dennis? Why hasn't this poor guy moved out by now? Move out of this haunted up house, and not just move out, but call the vacuum cleaner guy from Breaking Bad to hide his identity. Start a new life. And considering how many platforms, extra beds, cabinets, and needless household objects, I haven't seen a single bathroom. The weapons suck. You start off with a squirt gun that doesn't do diddly. Sometimes it freezes enemies for a second, but most of the time it does absolutely nothing. At least it's better than the Kane and Jekyll and Hyde, which does worse than nothing. It gets you dangerously close to enemies or even riles them up to attack you. So while the squirt gun does nothing, at least it's better than negative nothing. And that's a positive way to look at it, right? Well, the negative side to that is there's no such thing as negative nothing. Am I sure about that? I'm positive. You grab a slingshot at the beginning, but it also sucks. It shoots like 2 feet in front of you and hits the ground. There's also a pea shooter in the basement. That's the weapon you want, but it's a massive hike to get it. The path to it requires some serious pinpoint platforming accuracy. If you mess up, you have to run all the way back and start over. They made sure the path you need to be on is the most convoluted, out-of-the-way path possible. And it doesn't help that there's a million things trying to kill you at every step. So I'm just running around and holy it's Mr. Wilson himself. Out of nowhere comes this freaky giant Walter Matthau who charges at you and takes you away. If he catches you, it's instant death. That's right, Mr. Wilson finally did it. He killed Dennis the Menace. So who's the real Menace? Can you look more menacing, man? I gotta say, this is a type of game where you play the first level, run around like an idiot, finding doors you can't open, things you can't jump on, items and platforms you can't reach, and get so stressed out, you give up and turn the game off. Yeah, it's one of those. For the longest time, I couldn't even figure out what to do. Well, it turns out the object of the game is to collect 4 coins and find the end. That doesn't sound hard, but trust me, it is. Every level is a sprawling labyrinth and there's no indication of where the coins actually are. You just have to run around aimlessly for what feels like an eternity. It's like trying to find pieces of broken glass in an Olympic-sized swimming pool, and needless to say, the reward is rather painful. Sometimes you could even see a coin but have no idea how the to get it. Everything in the level looks the same and all the enemies respawn, so it's hard to know if I ran through that area already. Most of the time I'm running in circles and have absolutely no idea. Oh, and of course there's a time limit and it ends up being the biggest antagonist in the whole game. You have 999 seconds, which ends up being a little over 15 minutes, but if you die, the timer doesn't reset, no. And if that reaches 0, you lose all your lives and have to continue. This really blows because you have to start the entire level over. All your progress is gone and 15 plus minutes of your life wasted. And each stage is split into 4 or more levels, so it takes roughly an hour to complete one stage. If you continue and have to start over, it could take even longer. Most of the time I forget where the hell I went to find the coins, so I end up having to scour the entire level again. It's such a tedious process that I honestly can't understand how anyone would find this fun. The park stage is 6 levels long. You have 4 regular levels and 2 auto-scrolling levels. These auto-scrolling levels. These are a nightmare. If you make one mistake, you're done for. Enemies are everywhere. There's squirrels launching nuts, invincible owls, birds, bouncing balls, and swinging sacks. While dodging all this, you also have to make sure the dog stays close because you need it to make certain jumps. If you up in any way, you have to start the entire thing over, and like everything else, these levels go on forever. The feeling of getting far into the level only to lose is maddening. This level goes on for about 5 minutes, and that's if you don't die. If you do die, it could go on 20 minutes or more. Now think about that. This is only the 3rd level in the game, and I've been playing for 45 minutes. And this game has over 20 levels. I'm not joking. The level design is an anomaly of astrological proportions. Whoever is responsible for it obviously hates anyone who plays video games. There is absolutely no reason a game based on Dennis the Menace should be this hard. Contra and Ninja Gaiden, Dennis the Menace makes those games look easy. It's like they didn't want anyone to play it. It has no purpose except for sadistic seekers like myself. Even after you beat this, there's no comfort because you still have to play through 4 more levels in the park stage. The music just drones on and it's permanently burned into my memory. Each level ends with a boss fight that requires no skill, just the patience of a saint. The first boss is this deranged girl on a swing. Just when I thought things couldn't get any freakier. I mean, look at her face. She has this exaggerated Ren and Stimpy style expression. You just have to keep shooting her while dodging a mouse and an acorn. And when you beat her, she flies off and dies. Now, all that freakiness aside, this was just a regular girl swinging on a swing. Dennis the Menace. More like Dennis the Murderer.
Oh, Mr. Wilson!
What do you want?
That kid is a pain in the
The boss fights are all pretty much the same, shooting something while dodging. The bosses take a ton of hits to kill, and every time you hit them, they're invincible for a few seconds, so it just eats up more of your time. After the park stage, you go to the boiler. There's acid dripping out of pipes and steam shooting everywhere. There's also these little fire people walking around that are invincible. Your slingshot and pea shooter don't do a thing to them. And I know what you're thinking. This is the perfect time to use the water gun. Water to put out fire? Well, that would make sense, right? But of course, doesn't do just freezes them. This just baffles the out of me and really coils up my colon. Why the would the water gun not hurt the fire people? There's no reason to even have it. There's no reason for anything in this game. It's just bull meant to frustrate and confuse you. The platforming really starts to rear its ugly head here. Every level is a maze of pipes leading up and all around, and it's never clear where you have to go. If you miss a jump, be prepared to have to run through the entire level again. It's like the game was designed by a spoiled brat that wants nothing more than to you off. Dennis the Menace himself probably designed this. Every time I think this game can't possibly get any harder, the difficulty ramps it up to insane degrees. After the boiler is the sewer. Of course, right? It's like a game design requirement to have a sewer level. I've played a lot of sewer levels in my time, but nothing in all my years of gaming could prepare me for the sewer level in Dennis the Menace. First off, when the did this even happen in the movie? I'll admit, I haven't seen every episode of the cartoon, the sitcom, or read every panel of the comic strip, but I really don't remember ever seeing Dennis running around a sewer filled with snot and demonic heads barfing out water. There's even Ninja Turtles. I'm not kidding. Dennis the Menace is fighting Ninja Turtles in the sewer. I couldn't make this up if I tried. The first two sewer levels aren't even that hard. It kind of tricks you into thinking the worst is behind you. It isn't until Sewer 3 where the game really turns up the diarrhea dial and makes you wish for oblivion. The entire level is a platforming shower. Most of the level is just a pit with tiny platforms and enemies scattered all over. There's even green bubbles that pop after a few seconds, so you have to time your jumps precisely. Sometimes the bubbles won't spawn no matter what you do, so you just have to jump and hope there's something there to catch you. I spent my last 2 continues on this part, and when I saw that game over screen, I wanted to put my damn fist through the TV. I felt emotions I didn't even know existed here. Anger and rage on a level that normal human beings should never have to feel. I've had times where I was so close to shedding tears of rage. 2 hours of my life down the literally, the for the life of me. I just couldn't beat this level. And of course, I started the game back up and had to get all the way back. Honestly, I hate to say it, but I was going to resort to cheat codes, but there aren't any cheat codes. I was hoping for a level skip code just so I could start where I left off, but no. I had to run through Mr. Wilson's house again, the park, the boiler room, and the smeared sewers again. I also tried to look up a walkthrough because by this time I couldn't remember where in the hell all the coins were, but the only walkthrough I found stops at the 3rd park level. The writer quit after 4 levels. I was able to get to this point without using a single continue, and I knew what to expect here. It's weird to admit, but after playing this game for so long, my skills were heightened to the point of gaming godhood. But then I hit Sewer 4, and it was like I ran into a brick wall at full speed. I died over 25 times on this level alone. Everything that I complained about in the last level is ramped up to 11. The entire level is platforming and fish everywhere. Every time I get an inch further, I die and have to go back. It's a constant cycle of jumping, panicking, and dying. This level itself is a circle of hell meant only for the worst of sinners. Eventually I beat it, but at what cost? I was exhausted, and I just spent the entire day playing Dennis the Menace on Super Nintendo. The boss fight is a giant fish with disappearing platforms. I lost all my continues by this point, and when I finished the fight, I only had 6 lives left. And the worst part is I still had a whopping 5 levels to go. I got to the 2nd level in the woods, which is just another tree level like the park, and lost the last of my lives. I've been playing for almost 3 hours, 20 levels, and I got a game over. Well, that's it. I just can't take it anymore. I gotta see how this piece of ends. Earlier, I looked up walkthroughs, but not gameplay. I found some screenshots, Oh, look who it is. Christopher Lloyd, looking like he's from the cover of Mad Magazine. He was the bad guy in the movie, Switchblade Sam, but I don't remember him tying Dennis's friends to a damn tree. First time I'm hearing about that. The game doesn't start with any story. I'm not restarting this game just to see suck Sam roll by in a wheelbarrow while some pixelated stare at me under credits. This game sucks my with the shop vac. It rivals torture devices like the rack, the pendulum, and the Iron Maiden. If I ever have to play this again, I'll cut my hands off. I'd rather be waterboarded with weak old diarrhea. I'd rather deliberately give myself splinters on my and then tear them out with my teeth. I'd rather snort a line of Kate's cat litter than ever let this game soil my Super Nintendo again. Every single thing about this game and everyone who made it. Everyone who played it too, like myself. Dennis the Menace, more like Den the Men. Hey, Mr. Wilson, you